with a sacrifice that is being lifted up. And so we see this is really the way that we can live and to change our hearts before Him. First of all, we need to see what is the source of our problem. The source of their problem was their grumbling and complaining. Their hearts were grumbling. Their hearts weren't right before God. It's been rightly said, and I read this in a book where it was rightly said that a lifetime of grumbling gives you a lifetime of the wilderness. I think something like that. I think you've read the same thing, something along those lines. In other words, you really make your own wilderness in the sense of the way you approach with the attitude in your life. Cup half full, or is it half empty? What has God put in your life for a blessing as a steward? See, the reason this is important is that if we have this mentality that God hasn't given me enough, and that you're complaining about those things, you're not going to give out anything to anybody else. You're just going to complain, and you're not going to give and be a good steward of what God has been giving you. Man, this lousy talent. It's not giving me any water. Sure got plenty of bread, I just don't got enough water now. Okay, well, quail's coming out my nostrils, and now I need water. You know, we need to learn to be thankful for the things in our life.
Yes.
Because the reality is there's things that we will walk through. You know, I read a picture art once that had a picture of this tree in this canyon. It was pushing up through this canyon and blooming out largely. And the message said, faith is not getting around adversity, but pushing through it. And I thought, you know, that's a good message. Having faith in the Lord is not about trying to get out and around our circumstances, but actually through it. Really, that's the whole point of I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. That was what he was saying in the context of that scripture is I'm without and I'm in need and have an abundance and all these circumstances he went through, but in all those things, he can do those things through Christ. So first we need to, number one, there's three things that we need to see in our life in order to be healed this morning. And one is that we need to see the source of our problem. In other words, what's underneath our hearts, what's underneath the things in our life that's causing us to live the way we are in a mentality of being impatient, right? Or a mentality where we're not ready, or where out of a heart comes these things that defile us. See, James 4 says, where do rumors and fights come from among you? Do they not come from your desires for pleasure that war in your members? You lust and do not have. You murder and covet and cannot obtain. You fight and war, yet you do not have because you do not ask. You ask and do not receive because you ask amiss, that you may spend it on your pleasures. It goes on to say, adulterers and adulteresses, do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with God? In other words, the source of their fighting was that they didn't have enough stuff, or they didn't have what they wanted, what they lusted after, or what they desired. Apostle Paul says if we have food and drink, we should be content with these things. See, contentment holds our heart in such a way where it keeps us from a lot of things. What if Eve would have been content with the rest of the fruit in the garden? See the difference? What if David would have been content with all that God had been given him and didn't go after Bathsheba? If we have contentment in our life, it saves us from a world of hurt in our life. See, godliness, as Paul would say, godliness with contentment is great gain. See, we are to be content with the things that we have, that we are not to be content with our godliness, but we are to thirst for righteousness. And not be content where we are. We want to be closer to the Lord and closer.
Amen.
So what's the source? Or in other words, whenever you look in your life and you begin to see things that you do in your life, I want you to ask yourself this: what do you want? What do you want in your life? When you get up in the morning, what are you going after? What are you seeking after? What are you looking for in your life? When you go to that TV, whenever you go to get certain things or you go to do a certain thing, what are you looking for? What do you want in your life? See, I once asked this question at Faith City Mission whenever I was doing a discipleship with some of them that were wanting to be delivered from life-controlling things in their life. And I feel like it's important for us to go back to whatever addiction that a person may have and really ask the question, what is it that caused you to start doing that thing? What were you seeking after? I can tell you immediately why I started drinking. Is because I wanted to be accepted and received and cool with my friends. Now later it became an addiction, and I wanted it because I felt like I needed it physically. But at the beginning it was just for acceptance and to be loved and received. And I have to say that's a big motivation in a lot of our lives. Why do we do what we do? We lie because we want to be accepted. We don't want to be caught being whatever it is that we're hiding. We put up a facade so that we can be accepted by others. And again, we can drink and we can do those things so that we can be socially accepted. Or we can bend to the gossip or other things because of others that are around us. We have to look in our life and ask, what are we looking for and what are we after in our life? And a lot of times we try to meet the very temptation in our life with other things instead of with God. And because we don't get those things, because we ask and do not receive, we fight and murmur and complain, and we have not, because we ask not, because we ask amiss, because our hearts aren't right before God. You see the source of all those things? See, that's why James goes on to then say, submit to God and resist the devil. It's not just about resisting the stuff that we're tempted in, but it's about submitting to God and saying, Lord, whatever you have for me is enough. My satisfaction I find in you and no one else. Everything that I need is in you. It's not in all this other stuff in my life. So we need to uncover the things in our hearts and go to the source of the problem as to why we are the way we are. Number two, the result of doing it our way. What was the result that they had? They got bit, they were dying. We also become weary, we become thirsty, we become frustrated, and like them, we become grumblers and complainers, and we become an unfaithful servant. Snake bite brings death. In most cases, right? So what does sin do for us in our life? It kills us. That's what that snake is a type of, is the devil, or sin, in the sense of killing us in those things. And I've listed a few things that sin gets us. Since we love it so much, we might as well list all the benefits that it gets us. I say it jokingly, obviously. Number one, sin will never satisfy your heart. It just leaves you thirsty. It's like trying to get a drink out of sand. It looks good. It's like on a hot day when you're real thirsty and you just get a big drink of root beer.